Welcome everyone to the very first go-to session for the month. This is the first of 4 sessions that we'll hold this month. Remember, there's an associated quiz with each go-to session. I'll speak more about this in a second, but view those quizzes as some fairly easy points if you attend the session live, or for the people who watch the recording later, you have to either attend live or watch a recording of the session and then complete the quiz by Thursday at midnight Eastern time. But if you pay attention somewhat carefully during this session, the quiz questions are never designed to trip you up. They're not trick questions, so they should be hopefully easy points. We have a lot to cover in this first session, though. As a matter of fact, most of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight really lays the foundation of what we're going to be working on all month. So it's a pretty important session because we're doing a kind of unique project in this class, and this session really kind of lays the foundation for that. I'll try to keep my eyes open in the chat in case you have questions as we move along, but we'll leave some time open for the end as well for questions. Okay, so let's get moving. We have a lot to cover, but generally this is an overview to what we're doing this month, but also what we'll need to do for this week's first assignments. Okay, there's my name. I'm perfectly okay if you want to call me by my first name. The older I get, I'm 43. It's so surprising because when I look in the mirror, I look no older than 21. But the older I get, the harder it is to convince students to call me by my first name. So, go with whatever you're comfortable with. I know that Full Sail has a professionalism policy. You all know about that as well because Full Sail stresses it pretty strongly. Yeah, in general, you probably want to refer to your instructions as your instructors as Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so. Unless the instructor gives you permission, then it's fine. So if you want to call me David, that's great. If you want to call me Mr. Sussman, that's fine as well. But you won't insult me if you call me by my first name. Okay, so here's what we're going to go over tonight. I do want to begin with just some general things about the class. Most of you are probably in your 4th month or so, give or take. So you're probably pretty familiar with the FSO platform, but I will go over some really basic stuff specific to this class. And then, we'll get into what you need to do this week. And I do want to give us a general sense of what we're working on all month, which is a public service announcement. So we'll have to spend some time talking about what that is and what we're working toward. And then I want to get into some really specific stuff about audience, about topic selection, because we move pretty quickly the first 2 weeks. The good news is after the first 2 weeks, things kind of slow down somewhat, but the first 2 weeks are a little bit intense, and purposely so, because this class moves fast. It's only 1 month long. So we're going to get moving right away. You're going to be choosing topics that you're going to work on all month. And it's important that we get good topics for each of you, and I'll cover that in this session. I'll talk about what sorts of topics work, what sorts of topics don't. So again, this will be, I hope, a tremendously useful session. Okay, some kind of global stuff. McGrawHill, who's signed up already over at McGrawHill? That's where the textbook is. That's where some interactive modules are. Okay, good. Kenny signed up. Let me go to the FSO platform. Okay, so when you log in, you see something like this. This is the instructor view, but your view is pretty much identical. There are 2 activities here: ebook registration and the McGraw-Hill Learn Smart Achieve. In both these activities, you can find what's really important, which is the registration sheet. I'm going to go in there right now and open it. Okay, so you have this document down below here called Registration Details. Even though you have pretty long explanations of how to register, registration is actually really simple. You just open this PDF file. Okay, so there it is. And if you scroll down, there's this little address here. You just need to click on it. You shouldn't copy and paste it. I've heard there are problems if you try to copy and paste. I don't know if that's still true, but it used to be a problem. But if you just click on the document, it will take you to the McGraw-Hill site. Okay, I'm already logged in, but when you click the first time, you'll basically be walked through the registration steps. All you need is that registration code that should have been sent to your Full Sail email address. So it's really just a matter of clicking on that link and then following the steps. It's real easy. Easy peasy, as my kids like to say. Okay, so while we're here, let me go into our section real quickly. And let me point out a couple things about the McGrawHill site. You can see that you have a bunch of readings here organized by week. So I'll click on one of them. You can see there's a whole bunch of readings, and you might panic thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much to read. But don't panic, because look what happens if I click on like the first reading here, what is good writing? It will take a second for it to load. And then you'll see it's not a tremendously long reading assignment. I mean, other reading assignments are maybe a bit longer, but none of the reading assignments are tremendously lengthy. So don't ignore the reading requirements, okay? They're pretty short. Oh, this reminds me of something. Sometimes you'll see a little like activity at the end. It's like a thought question or a writing activity or something designed to test your knowledge of what you just read. You never have to complete those, okay? You just need to do the reading. So don't worry about any sort of mini activities that appear near the bottom. That said, there are some activities that you need to complete all month long. They're called Learn, Smart, Achieve modules, and you can see these are organized by week as well. They're always due on the Saturday for each week. So this week 1 module is due this Saturday at midnight Eastern. It's all about thesis and persuasion. Real simply, if you just click on the module, it again will walk you through the steps of setting things up. And it's just a sort of interactive, almost game-like activity where you answer a series of questions. And here's the thing: if you just complete it, okay, you can see your progress, see how close you are to getting to 100% completion. As long as you complete the thing, you get all those points. So one piece of advice I have is to take advantage of all the sort of gimme points, I like to call them, the sort of not exactly free points, but they're pretty close to free because you just need to do them. If I go back to the main activities page, you'll see that they're worth, I think, 3 or 4%. So, for example, the one that's due this Saturday, the 1.5 assignment, Learn, Smart, Achieve, Thesis, and Persuasion, it's worth 3%. I think some of the later ones increase. Yeah, so the week 2 one is 4%. But my point is, you have a lot of gimme points. Like there's a professional emails quiz that you have to take this week. It's really easy. Like I never see students who get lower than a B on that quiz. And actually, if you read through the materials carefully, almost nobody gets lower than an A. So that's our sort of gimme. If you complete the textbook stuff, the Learn, Smart, Achieve modules, that's another like I don't know, 15% that's pretty much in your pocket. So take advantage of all those easy points. These go-to quizzes aren't terribly difficult. So I always hate saying this because I feel like I'm almost teaching you a trick. But if you can grab the sort of 40% of the class that's kind of handed to you, you'll put yourself in a really, really good position to do well in the course. Okay. So it's always depressing when I see students who don't complete the textbook activities or just skip an easy quiz like the professional emails quiz. Don't do that. Okay, where was I? The textbook. Yeah, I think I covered everything I needed to cover there. Basically, just don't forget about those interactive modules. By the way, I swear I'm not shilling for the company. I'm not trying to persuade people, but I've been using these textbook modules for over a year now, and students by and large like them. Like they don't view them as busy work. They like the idea that if they just complete them, they get all the points associated with those activities. I mean, there are a few people sometimes who aren't crazy about it, or they wish that it had been replaced by some other activity. But I honestly would say that about 8 out of 10 students actually find those modules useful and beneficial. So just another reason to not forget about them. Let me take a sip from my Diet Coke. Okay. Real quick reminders. If you need to send me a message, there's this little envelope icon up here. Use this if you absolutely I shouldn't say absolutely. If you need a response from me, and somewhat quickly, because here's what happens. There's this little bell like icon at the top here, right? And this gives me notifications anytime you guys do anything. Like if you sneeze, I get a notification. If you click complete on one of these ungraded activities that are purely informational, like welcome to English composition, I get a notification. So if I click on it, you can see, uh, actually, that's last month's class, which isn't a problem. It's the same class, but let me go into this month's section. Okay, so if I click on this little bell here, like you can get a sense here, like Corey completed the welcome to English composition activity. Another person submitted the professionalism thing. So I get an update on every little thing that you do. But if you've noticed, when you complete an activity, you always have the ability to leave a comment. And when you leave a comment, it gets buried under the literally dozens, sometimes hundreds of notifications I receive. And those are harder for me to spot. I mean, I do try to keep my eyes open for them, especially these first few days. A couple of you have already left comments under activities, which is fine. But if you need a response that you want me to give you an answer to, please use the envelope icon, okay? Because that way the envelope lights up immediately, and I see that there's a message waiting for me to respond to. Okay, back on track. Okay, so let's start talking about the things you need to do this week. I already mentioned two of them, right? There's a professional emails quiz to take, which is pretty easy. There's that first Learn Smart Achieve module that you have to complete over at the textbook site, which is due Saturday. But the real first kind of major assignment is a discussion-based assignment, which I actually have to explain quite a bit to get you prepared for what you need to do for that assignment. So we're going to start doing that now. And we're going to do that by first talking about what we're working on all month. And that is a public service announcement. When I say the words public service announcement, and you can either raise your hand if you want to speak out loud and I can unmute you, or you can use the chat down below. But like when you hear the word public service announcement, what does that mean to you? Or give me examples. What does that mean? Like if you're watching television or you're listening to the radio, what sorts of information do public service announcements cover? Andre says Super Bowl commercial with a kid who died. Okay, that's actually a pretty awesome example. I'll be a little bit nitpicky and say that technically it's a commercial because it's for nationwide insurance. And actually, I was watching a fascinating thing on the news the other night where they pointed out the fact that it feels like a public service announcement. But is it a powerful message when you realize that it's really just an insurance company promoting at the end, or is it still powerful? But yeah, I think in spirit, it's kind of functioning pretty close to a public service announcement. Actually, I would say it's almost exactly like a public service announcement. Kenneth has his hand up, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Give me 2 seconds here. Okay, Kenneth, did you want to say something out loud? I unmuted you, Kenneth. Hopefully your machine has internal microphone that can pick you up, or maybe you raised your hand by mistake. I'm not hearing you on my end. Okay, I'm gonna put your hand down. Jarrell, I'm gonna unmute you. Your hand up as well. If you made a mistake, just let me know if you didn't mean to raise your hand and speak out loud. Jarrell, did you want to say something? Jarrell made a mistake too. Okay, no problem. I'm going to put everyone's hands down. Other people. Tony says health issues, domestic violence. Okay, great. Right, like that. The Super Bowl ad for the woman who's on the phone. Right, she's ordering a pizza, but she's not really ordering a pizza because she's calling 911. Yeah, that's like a public service announcement. Let's see. What did some other people say? I hope I'm not saying this name incorrectly. Terard says a missing person. Yeah, I mean that's similar to a public service announcement. It's probably maybe a little bit different, but I guess it has a similar function. Ken, that says something about an Indian with one tear crying over litter. I don't know if that was that an ad during the Super Bowl, or is that something you've seen on television? I'm not familiar with that one. Okay, but mostly it seems like you guys are on the right track. Public service announcements are things like, um, at its simplest, like Smokey the Bear, only you can prevent forest fires. Or back in the day when I was growing up in the '80s, it was like this. They were one of the most powerful ones. Anti-drug was someone cracked an egg over a frying pan. First, they show the whole egg and say this is your brain, and then they crack the egg into the pan. They say this is your brain on drugs. So that's kind of an example. Someone said McGruff, yeah, or those Sarah McLachlan, the singer, those really tremendously sad. I think it's for the ASPCA that seem to be on at night with all the sad looking dogs and cats in cages. Like that's a public service announcement. And those are really long. Like you try to change the channel because it's so depressing, and you figure, well, 3 minutes have passed. It has to be over now. And then you go back, and it's still going on and on and on. Or here in Florida, because Jarrell just mentioned quit smoking ads. Yeah, here in Florida, there's some really, really intense anti-cigarette ads, showing people with their vocal cords gone, showing people who have lost limbs. I mean, they're really, really intense spots. But yeah, those are public service announcements. I think the main thing I want to stress here is they're not commercials, okay? Commercials sell a product. Public service announcements deliver an important message on an issue that needs attention, right? So you're raising awareness about an issue and you're asking a specific audience to do something about it. So you might be asking someone who smokes to stop smoking, or it might be specifically targeting teens to tell them not to even start smoking. Okay, so the audience can differ. There are different ways to go about delivering your message, but ultimately that's what a public service announcement does. It raises raises awareness about an important issue and asks an audience to do something about it. The difference is, and let me take a quick sip from my drink, is that for this class you won't be doing public service announcements on smoking or preventing forest fires or domestic violence. You'll be creating public service announcements that deal with issues within your own industries. Okay, you're all here at Full Sail to study specific fields. Maybe people want to go ahead and write in the chat what you're here to study. Do we have music production people, recording arts, animation, show production, mobile app design? Okay, Terrard is in recording arts. Game design. Okay, good. I forgot the gaming fields. Computer animation, creative writing, film. Okay, great. So your challenge is you're going to have to identify an issue within your field. So that's what I have here on this slide, that the PSAs, public service announcements, for this class need to be industry related. Okay, they must be narrow in scope, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a second. Remember that the PSA tries to persuade. Okay, whether it's an anti-smoking PSA or whether it's something very, very specific to your industry, you're going to be persuading, and you're going to have a message calling for action or support. In other words, you're going to be asking a specific audience to do something about this issue. How many of you have some background or experience in your fields already? Lots of people don't, but some people do. Is there anybody who's worked actually in the field? Andre has. Okay, Andre, if you want to share with us what you did, that would be cool. Same thing with Jarrell. But sometimes I have people who've already worked in like graphic design firms, or they've worked in the studio, or they recorded an album. I ask this question because if you have some industry experience, you might already be able to come up with topics already. Like you might already be aware of issues. If you don't panic. Part of this is designed to help you learn more about your industry. That's sort of a secondary goal of this class, is that, we'd like you to learn more about the field that you're entering if you don't know much about it already. But that's what we're doing, okay? Public service announcements that focus on an important issue within your industry. And here's just a quick overview of what the whole month is going to look like. Week 1, so that's the week we're in right now, you're going to come up with a topic. And for this week's first activity, I'm going to ask you to do quite a bit. I'm going to ask you to write an actual introduction paragraph, the sort of introduction paragraph that will begin your essay that is due at the end of week 2, and to come up with a thesis that will end that introduction paragraph. So yeah, I want to get moving on this pretty quickly. You're going to find a topic, and you're already going to start writing that opening paragraph to your essay. And I'm going to show examples of all of this, so don't worry. Week 2, you're going to continue to improve your topic if it needs improvement, and then yes, you're going to write that 2 to 4 page essay that's due Sunday, the end of week 2. There's only one essay in this class. Okay, 1 2 to 4 page paper. So it's not the sort of typical English class maybe you took in high school, or if you've taken a college composition class elsewhere. There's only one essay, but there's a lot of sneaky writing in this class. For example, you're going to do quite a bit of writing for this week's first activity. You'll have to do writing in other forms. So you'll do more writing than you think, but there's actually only one formal essay to write. Week 3, you're going to do a little bit of peer review where you'll look at each other's essays and give each other advice and feedback. And then week 4, and I'm not going to explain too many of the details yet because I don't want to start having you worrying too much about things that are farther down the road, but you're going to produce an actual multimedia PSA. So you might want to think of the essay as where you'll explore your topic and your issue on the page. And then in week 4, you'll actually create a public service announcement in the form of a video, an audio piece, a short sort of comic, or some sort of visual. Most people choose like a comic, but they can also create a poster or an infographic. You can create a song or jingle that delivers a message. Okay, so that's what ultimately what we're working toward. That just like you see PSAs on television or hear them when you're driving in the car, or you stumble across them online, or you see them in a magazine, you'll be creating the same thing come week 4. So I have a lot of fun with this project. Again, the first couple weeks might seem a little bit intense, but if you hang in there and stick with me and ask questions whenever you feel confused or you need some help or some direction, like I see really terrific things that get created by the end of the course. So it's actually a fun project. Okay, now I need to back up a little bit because I do want to sort of set up a fuller understanding of what we're working on and what you need to do for this week. But in order to do that, I need to make some quick comments about audience and the importance of audience. Audience is always a key feature of writing. Other classes you might have taken stress this perhaps, but for this month, and this is why I like the public service announcement idea, it's not that I want to teach you to create public service announcements, which is something you probably will never have to do in your life, but I like how the public service announcement finds a creative way to teach writing basics, like finding a topic, narrowing it down, thinking about audience, doing a bit of research to support what you have to say, organizing your thoughts first in an essay and then later in a multimedia format. So we're sort of stressing these principles, but through a sort of creative means. But we need to talk about audience a little bit, because for the public service announcement, it really is all about audience. So there's this thing called the rhetorical situation, or sometimes it's called the rhetorical triangle, because that's how it's framed. I'm just going to give the sort of Reader's Digest version, the sort of simplified version. You can see here there's this triangle, right? And at each angle, we have 3 different items: the writer, the reader, and the text. What I want you to understand is that these 3 terms are all interconnected. You change any one element and it affects the other 2. So a really common sense example would be, for example, let's say you have to leave a basic set of instructions for someone to follow. If your reader is a child, you, the writer, will make different choices based on your audience, and those choices will be reflected in the text. If you're leaving those same set of instructions for an adult, that would be a different reader, so it would affect your choices as a writer differently, and accordingly also affect the text. Okay, and same thing if we look at this from any sort of angle, right? You're going to initially explore your own topic in essay form. So that's one kind of text which will affect you as a writer, and will have, or will, excuse me, leave a different impression on the reader. When we get to week 4, when you actually create a multimedia public service announcement, let's say you create a video or a short jingle, that's a very different kind of text, which will also affect the choices you make as a writer. It will also impact the way your reader digests that information. Okay, so basically, I just wanted you to come away with the understanding that writer, reader, text, they're all interconnected. You change any one element and it affects the other two. Which I believe leads me to quiz question number 1. By the way, most weeks the quiz questions appear sporadically throughout the presentation. Oh, and that reminds me of something too. I wonder if I can show it. Okay, when you go into the go-to quiz, there it is, 1.3. Okay, so the week 1 go-to quiz for this session, which is due Thursday night at midnight. Things might look a little bit differently to you, but this is what it looks like. Like, you won't see any questions, okay? It will just say, put your answer here. That's because the quiz questions are contained in the session. So here comes quiz question number 1. Okay, what is the rhetorical situation? In other words, explain the triangle, its parts, and its functions. Okay, so basically just kind of explain to me what we just discussed on the last slide and put your answer in the box within the quiz itself. I say this in the session because I get a lot of questions about, where are the quiz questions? I went into the quiz and I didn't see any questions. That's because they're contained in the presentation. And it might sound harsh, but the reason I do that is because if I have the quiz questions literally appear on the quiz, some students, not any of you, of course, because you're here attending live, but some students sometimes try to guess their way through the questions, and I don't want that. So making sure that the questions only appear in the go-to session kind of ensures that people are watching the session and hopefully doing so with care. So there's question number 1. Just explain to me what the rhetorical situation is. Okay? Explain the triangle, its parts, and its functions. Okay, a bit more about audience. So we've talked about how audience, when it changes, can affect the choices you make as a writer, and how those choices affect the text itself. But there's another aspect to this too, which is that as writers, we have different tools, different ways we can reach an audience. And there are 3 major ways we can try to reach an audience and affect them. And the 3 different appeals have fancy Greek names. Anybody want to show off and name one of those fancy Greek terms? Maybe you already knew it already, or maybe you already encountered it in your reading for this week. If not, that's okay. Okay, good. Andre's showing off. Logos, good. Yeah, we'll get to logos in just 1 second, but the first one is called pathos. By the way, I really don't care if you remember when this course is over these fancy Greek words. I just want you to understand the essence of them. I mean, you'll need to remember these terms for another quiz question that's coming up in 2 seconds. But really, it's the definition I want you to understand more. So pathos, okay, which is the appeal to emotion. This means trying to reach people through their hearts, trying to get them to feel something. Those Sarah McLachlan public service announcements, in those, pathos is working overtime, right? I mean, it's just sad dogs, sad cats, animals locked in cages, like it's tugging on your heartstrings. That's its main move. It's trying to really kind of break your heart and cause you to take action. That's pathos. So obviously, if we're trying to reach the heart, the complete opposite of that would be to try to reach the brain, which is logos, the appeal to logic or reason. Think of like Mr. Spock from Star Trek, or Data from Star Trek The Next Generation. Okay? Logos means things like using facts, statistics, things that would really convince a person who, yeah, they might be persuaded by emotional appeals, but at a certain point they might say, well, but I need proof, right? Show me that this is a real issue. Show me that this is a problem. Where are your numbers? Um, where are your facts? Where's your support? Okay, that's logos, the desire for sort of reason and logic. And the last one is ethos, which is the appeal to authority or credibility. This one's a bit harder to describe because it really refers to the overall credibility that you create as the writer. And you can establish that in lots of different ways. For example, if you decide, let's go back to the Smokey the Bear thing. Okay, only you can prevent forest fires. Like if you were to quote someone when you're making your case about the importance of preventing forest fires, who would be a more persuasive person to sort of rely upon to quote? A forest ranger who has 25 years experience, or Kim Kardashian, right? You build and increase the ethos of what you're doing if you cite someone who's, for example, an authority in the field. But it's not just about citing experts in the field or citing authoritative people. That's part of it. Credibility is also built in the choices you make as a writer. For example, you can gain a lot of trust with your readers just based on the way that you phrase things. If your topic's quite serious and yet you're writing it in a sort of chatty and formal, almost jokey tone, that sort of affects ethos because the reader might not take your words as seriously as they should. So it really has to deal with all the choices you make as a writer to develop authority and credibility so that your readers actually trust what you have to say. Okay, and I think the next slide is a quiz question. Yeah, someone mentioned Kim Kardashian in the thing. She had a commercial in the Super Bowl, right? Kind of a funny one. Serious quiz question number 2. What are those 3 types of persuasive appeals? Name them. Define them. And if you can, give an example of each, okay? So essentially just kind of give me what we just went over. pretty easy quiz questions. So yeah, jot down these questions, or if you know how to take screenshots, take a quick screenshot. Because remember, when you take the quiz, the questions won't actually appear. You'll just type in your answers. Okay, moving on. Let's start talking about topics that will work for your public service announcement. So my first message is to start brainstorming topics now. Okay, I want. Well, I'm revealing a quiz. I'm revealing a quiz question in advance, but one of your questions will ask you to give me a topic. So when your quizzes are handed in by Thursday night, I'll try as quickly as possible on Friday to grade them and give you feedback on your topic idea. If it's still not perfect, because about half of you might have pretty solid topics already, but another half of you might need some refinement, that's okay. But yeah, by the beginning of week 2, we need to get your topics pretty firmly in place. But that means we need to start getting moving right now. Here's some tips for finding your issue. If you know people who work in the industry, pick their brains. Okay? Read industry-related journals, magazines, and newspapers. Most of you probably will do number 3, which is fine. I have no problem with this. Google. Okay? Google is your friend. Search for current debates, current controversies, current challenges, etc. So if you don't know your industry that well, that's fine. But start moving and learning about what are the issues that are currently going on. Social issues, tech issues, health and safety issues, financial issues, troubling trends. All that stuff tends to work really, really well. But yeah, we need to get you guys topics, okay? Now here are some concerns, okay? These are the sorts of things to avoid. And I put these in 2 broad categories that are going to appear in 2 separate slides. So on this slide, the first thing to be careful of is to be careful of topics that are too broad or that are rooted in personal opinion. So here are some examples of that. Hollywood is unoriginal. Okay, I mean, that's pretty broad, but it's also like personal opinion. Like I get it to a certain degree. You see Saw 10 and another Transformers movie. What are we up to? Transformers 4. And yeah, you can come to the conclusion that Hollywood isn't very original, but that's not completely true. I mean, that's the problem with very, very broad statements is that they're difficult to research. They're difficult to truly prove that they're real, concrete problems. Uh, so be careful of that. Piracy of music must stop. I'm going to be mean and say that even though piracy is an issue, I'm not crazy about it just because I don't know. It's 2015. Most people know about piracy. There are so many issues in the music industry. So, you music people, you have like a gazillion topics. I'm going to be mean and not give examples of them right now because I don't want you to just grab what I say and run with it. But if you're struggling, yeah, I'll help you every step of the way. I promise. I'm great at getting students eventually settled with a topic that interests them and that is specific and that is concrete. But for now, at least, I'm going to tell people to try to avoid the piracy thing. It's just, I don't know. When I first started teaching this lesson over a year ago, it was like everybody just submitted piracy, 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 and I don't know. I want you to learn more about your industry, and it seems like piracy is sort of an easy grab. That said, if you can find things that are sort of related to that, or that are a variation on it, or that are much more specific, like, well, it's not a piracy issue, but what is the issue with piracy? It's really about declining music sales, and piracy is a major contributor to that. But there are other things that affect declining music sales, like streaming music. Uh, so if you want to focus on something like that, or the royalty rates that are paid out by streaming music companies to artists, that's a concrete topic. Don't limit yourself. There are specific tech issues. There are things, whether your field is animation or mobile app design or computer animation, like sometimes they're just little tech issues that you've noticed. Sometimes there are somewhat larger social issues. So there are a lot of things that you can focus on. But yeah, I'm going to be mean and say that I'd like to see you push past piracy. And real quickly, the others are just examples of personal opinion. Number three, I get a lot. The music industry is all about money and only cares about an artist's image, not talent. Or music today is terrible compared to past generations. Does this make sense when I say that these are a bit too rooted in personal opinion? Because this really is a pitfall that we have to be careful of. A public service announcement, remember, raises awareness on a very concrete issue, and encourages a specific audience to do something about it. A public service announcement is not you trying to persuade other people that your opinions about things are correct. I mean, listen, we all have strong opinions, right? I have very, very strong opinions on movies and music and all that stuff. But I would never create a public service announcement about that, because that's just my opinion. Yeah, Jarrell says they're all a bit biased. That's the key thing here. Like, again, I get it. The music industry is all about money and only cares about an artist's image. But when was that not true? Like, that's always kind of been the case. Or music today is terrible. I disagree. Right? I mean, there's so much great music out there. But yeah, if you look at the top, if you're not crazy about the top 40 and you're tired of seeing Iggy Azalea and Charlie XCX and Ariana Grande, all of which I love, by the way, or Taylor Swift, but but still, it seems like it's too rooted in personal opinion, which is not what a public service announcement is. Okay. Oh, the second thing to be careful of, topics where there is no problem or issue. Okay, so I tend to see, on the one hand, sometimes people slip a little bit too much into personal opinion, but sometimes they do the opposite, which is they deliver very, very factual topics, but topics that don't really have a persuasive stance. So film has made such great technological advances. Okay, I agree, but like, what can we do with that? Like, what's the issue that needs awareness and needs attention and needs action? Or graphic design is important and it's all around us. I agree, absolutely. But again, that's not a public service announcement. So yeah, if you keep in mind that you just need to find a problem or an issue or something that needs attention, something that you can ask a specific audience to do something about, then I think you'll be on the right track. And again, I'll help you every step of the way. So, um, Andre says the new Taylor Swift song "Blank Space" is actually not awful. I agree, it's awesome. I love Taylor Swift. Can't get enough. Shake It Off. I also like that All About That Bass, that Megan Trainor song. And what's that one with Jessie J and Ariana Grande and Nicki Minaj? Bang or Bang Bang? I get confused because there's Bang Bang and there's Boom Clap. Everything's boom and bang, and I get confused who sings what. I like those. Jarrell says, "What about messages in music then to now?" I need to know more about that. I'm, I mean, I'm concerned. That sounds. I mean, be careful. We're not writing reports, so is there something about messages? Tupac to Lil Wayne, what's being said? Yeah, we'll have to keep talking, Jarrell. I'm concerned because I'm actually glad you brought that up because I get that a lot too, where people will say like, my topics are going to be the history of hip hop music, and unfortunately, it's not a public service announcement. That's like a report. That's like an informational piece. That's like an overview. And I admit that could be fascinating. It's just not a public service announcement. Um, and again, it's not my obsession to teach you all how to write public service announcements. It's just the public service announcement is a great way to teach persuasion, right? Topic, message, audience. So we need to make sure that we actually have a core issue that needs attention. Yeah, Jarrell, send me a message when through the FSO platform because I'm still a bit concerned. Like, okay, there are differences in messages, um, but how is that a persuasive piece? Unless you're suggesting something like messages have gotten worse compared to 20 years ago. But again, that we'll have to talk. I'm concerned that's kind of getting into personal opinion type things. I mean, if we go back 25 years ago, I mean, Wu-Tang Clan, Public Enemy, there were some pretty intense lyrics back then too. So I get a little bit concerned when people make broad generalizations about how things are better today compared to the past or how things are worse today compared to the past. But we'll keep talking. We'll find you something. I guarantee we can find you something related to hip hop if that's what interests you. Will Boyd has a good one. Internet bullying. What's your field of study, Will? And if other people want to throw their ideas onto the board, they can do that too. Music production. Oh, okay. I'd assume maybe you were in game design because that's like a big issue in gaming, right? People going online and internet bullying. Is there a specific problem with internet bullying in music production? Because that's another thing too. Is it has to be industry specific. So if there is, then you found your topic. But be careful because I do see some people who drift into sort of topics that are interesting and fascinating, and they probably would work as a PSA, but I just don't see the industry specific um, issue. Terrard says stealing music. Yeah, but I said I'd like to see people push past the piracy topic, unless you mean something different. Jarrell says that's the only problem. The only effective top is piracy. No, no, no. Jarrell, don't worry. You're panicking because it's too early. I mean, you have time to find your topic still. Google. I mean, usually we instructors hate it when people just Google, but in this case, Google is a great way to get started. I can give you 10 music issues off the top of my head. I just don't want to do it because then you'll just grab one of them. I'd rather see you struggle, not because I like to see people struggle, but because I think better things happens when you find your topic. But yeah, music is easy. 10 billion topics out there to write about. Nathan says the use of drugs in music making it seem cool. I'll consider that. Yeah, that's again. You maybe message me. I'll tentatively approve that because it does seem. I mean, it seems a little bit personal opinionish, but on the other hand, what was I listening to the other day? Danny Brown. You know, every song is about Molly and this, that, or the other. Is that what you're talking about? Kind of like it's all, like artists may have always sung about drugs, but it seems really intense now, perhaps. Um, okay, I'm going to move on because I fear that maybe some of our other classmates are going to pass out. But actually, it is good to eavesdrop because even though we've been talking mostly about music, you need to find topics that fit your own field as well. So you computer animation people out there, Kenny, what is swatting? I saw that question earlier. Computer animation has its issues too. And again, I'll ask you to do some initial research. Google, I hate to keep saying it, Google. And if you're really struggling, then you should get back to me and report what you found, and then I can help you and steer you in the right direction. But I'd really like to see you guys kind of find your own topics without me sort of giving them to you. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Swatting. I think I had a student who wrote about that once. Is that like a real? I mean, I've read stories of it happening, but is it truly widespread? Is it like something that needs immediate attention? Is it something that's happening so much that it, or are these just isolated incidents that get a lot of attention in the press but aren't really a problem? That said, internet bullying in terms of gaming is a great topic, right? I just thought of that because it's kind of related to swatting. Oh, by the way, here's quiz question number 3. Propose a topic. Okay, that's a question. So propose your topic. What is your chosen industry problem, and why is it important to raise awareness about it? I mostly give credit here for you doing the best job you can, given the fact that you only have 48 hours to find a topic. But if it's not in perfect shape, don't worry. I'll give you feedback on your quiz, and then we'll try to get you, all of you, on a good path by the latest early next week. Okay, I'm falling a little bit behind, so let me speed up. Let's talk about the assignment you're doing this week, which is, yes, to choose your topic, develop a thesis, and write an introduction paragraph. So yeah, we're doing a lot, but I'm going to show an example, and hopefully this will make everything crystal clear. But first, let's talk about thesis statements and introduction paragraphs, which means we have to talk a little bit about essay fundamentals. Okay, thesis statements. You've probably heard about this before, okay? In high school, you must have heard about thesis statements. A thesis acts like a roadmap to your paper. It typically appears at the end of the introduction. It's a sentence or two that defines your paper and tells readers where your paper is heading. You've probably heard something like that before, and you'll get even more information about thesis statements as you read the assigned McGrawHill chapters. For this class, the thesis is actually not that difficult because in other classes you have to develop a unique thesis, or you have to come up with an interpretive stance on, I don't know, a novel or a short story that delivers your thesis. Here, thesis is pretty simple. You just need to deliver your PSA topic, the specific audience you're trying to reach, and what you want that audience to do. So here's an example of a thesis statement, okay? Though video game companies have made strides in presenting strong, non-sexualized images of women, these companies need to be pressured to do more. Gamers need to write to game publishers and gaming magazines and let their voices be heard. Okay, so 2 sentences. In those 2 sentences, we get the topic, right? Something about damaging or problematic images of women in video games. There's a specific audience invoked, gamers, right? The audience could be different. You could call on the CEOs of game publishers to do something, or you could call on the development teams themselves to do something. But again, if we think back to the rhetorical triangle, that would result in a much different essay. It's not a wrong essay, it would just be a different one. And then specifically what we want that audience to do. In this case, it's gamers making their voices heard by writing to game publishers and editors of gaming magazines. So your thesis is going to do something like that. Okay, in a sentence or 2, it's going to capture what your topic is, it's going to identify an audience, and it's going to deliver what it is you want that audience to do. Your challenge is just to find some somewhat natural way to do that in a sentence or 2. So pretty simple, because it's just a statement of the very things we've been discussing. Okay, introductions. The main task for this first discussion assignment this week is to write an introduction that ends with a thesis. The great thing is that even though it seems like you're having to do so much with choosing a topic, writing an introduction, writing a thesis, if you get these parts down, the first paragraph of your essay is already written. So next week, when it comes time to write that 2 to 4 page paper, a paragraph of it is already done. So that's part of the plan here, is to get you moving on this. But here's what introduction paragraphs do. Introductions briefly define the issue at hand. Okay, you save the good stuff for the body of the paper, but you do briefly kind of explain what the issue is. We just covered this. Introduction should end with a clear thesis statement. And ideally, readers should find an engaging way to grab the reader's attention. And there are lots of ways to grab the reader's attention, and here's a list of them. I like to call these hooks. Again, you've probably heard some of these in high school, but these are sort of tricks or hooks or techniques that we can use to start the paper with a bang and really grab the reader. You can begin with an example or anecdote. It can be researched or personal. For example, maybe there's something that happened in your life that works perfectly as a way to introduce your topic. Maybe there's something going on in the news right now. If I were writing about the low royalty rates paid out by streaming music companies to artists, complaining that the royalty rates are too low, maybe I would use the Taylor Swift example, because she's been in the news a lot lately because she pulled her music from Spotify, right? We can begin with a thoughtful question or a powerful quotation. We can begin with a dramatic or descriptive hypothetical scene. This is sort of like an imagine this or picture, if you will, type scenario. It's invented, but it's invented with such specificity that it feels real. Or you can begin with some insightful or surprising facts or statistics. Here's the thing. These are all awesome techniques. They truly are, but they become terrible techniques if they're just used generically. For example, beginning with a thoughtful question is a great way to begin an essay, but just dropping in a question that you're not terribly interested in asking and the reader isn't really interested in answering, that's not such a great technique. So to begin a paper with, what is music? Or what is love? Right? I mean, a mechanical question that's just taking up space becomes a less than powerful move. And same thing for all of these. So the trick here is to kind of find your way into the paper. It requires usually some brainstorming to find what is the best technique that you can use to introduce your topic. Jarrell says, I just did that topic on Taylor Swift and did another one on Garth Brooks. And I also did one on Pharrell's legal battle over copyrights. Okay, great. Like any one of those examples. Here's the thing. Like, I don't know if all three of those examples are related to the same topic. But you would want to save some of that stuff for the body of your paper. But yeah, like you would choose a really good one maybe to begin your paper. So let me give an example of how this looks in real time. Okay, if we go back to the main activities page, which will load in any second. Oh, there it is. Okay, so here it is, 1.4. This is the first activity. I'm going to go in to the discussion board. Yeah, Jarrell, you can't use anything that was used in a previous class, so you have to create everything fresh. But definitely keep those techniques in mind. So maybe you have to come up with a different example or a different thing. Okay, I've went into the class discussion board. This is where you're going to post your introduction paragraph. There are a couple other requirements, so make sure that you're opening the actual assignment sheet, which I have here. You can read through all the specifics here, how much of your grade it's worth. But the important stuff is probably over here. Compose what you need to do. So yeah, step one is to post your introduction paragraph, okay? That contains your thesis statement. But there are other things you have to address too. Like, what are your two main reasons for choosing this topic? What can your audience realistically do about the issue? How will you persuade them? And what questions do you have for your classmates? The good news is I've already modeled this on the board, okay? So please go through the assignment sheet. But if you're confused, you can also just look at my example. So here's my number one here, my actual introduction paragraph. So when it comes time to write my essay, this would be my opening paragraph. I'm going to read this out loud. I'll try to do it pretty quickly, though, and see if you can identify which hook or technique I am using. In March 2013, game development company Crystal Dynamics released Tomb Raider, a reboot of the long-standing popular video game series. There were significant changes to the game, shifting away from the block-pulling, block-pushing, puzzle-solving format that had changed little since the original Tomb Raider appeared in 1996. There were new controls and an emphasis on an open-world environment, but perhaps the biggest change came for the game's protagonist herself, Lara Croft. Gone were the short shorts and skimpy tops. Gone was Lara's unrealistic figure, small-waisted and big-chested. Instead, a new Lara appeared, one whose character design was less an adolescent boy's comic book dream and more a realistic portrayal of how a real young woman might actually look. And then comes my thesis. Though video game companies like Crystal Dynamics have made strides recently by presenting strong, non-sexualized images of women, these companies need to be pressured to do more. Gamers need to write to game publishers and gaming magazines and let their voices be heard. Okay? So, what is the technique being used here? Like, what's the hook? Can anybody identify what I decided to go with? Facts? Okay, yeah. Well, I think of the beginning with a surprising fact or statistic as being sort of more hard facts, like I don't know, like when you like if you're doing things, excuse me, if you were doing your topic on royalty rates paid out by streaming music companies, like to begin with shocking facts like Lady Gaga only got paid $137 for her song Poker Face. I think that's actually a true fact. Like that would be a startling fact. So yes, there are facts here, but I think there's a larger technique that's taking place here. Can we see it? Do we need to see the list again? Dramatic. Okay, I'll spill the beans. Big picture. Okay. It's an example. Okay, I'm using the example of the Tomb Raider reboot to introduce the topic. Your other answers aren't wrong. It's just I think the example is sort of the main driving force here. And yeah, that's the technique I came up with. Okay, because by the way, awesome game, the Tomb Raider reboot. But I have played like every game in the series, and it was impressive to see that the game finally made this big switch. So like I thought that was a nice way to introduce the larger topic of um, images of women in video games and how changes are occurring, but there's still more needs to happen. So I decided to use the example technique. Um, and notice I've answered the other question as well. I've explained why I chose a topic, what I think my audience can do, and why. Questions for classmates. So I ask, is my appeal too broad? Should I be pushing for something more specific than just asking gamers to speak out? Do you find my Tomb Raider example successful? By the way, this is also like I purposely chose a social concern. But notice, some of you might be thinking, but wait a second, you just told us you shouldn't write from personal opinion. How is this not your personal opinion? Um, I mean, it is somewhat, but it's also rooted in fact. Like, we could get most sane people to sit down and agree that this issue exists. Maybe for you, it's not a pressing issue. Maybe for you, you think, it's not that big of a deal. Who cares? Or why can't people lighten up? But like, it's been in the news, the whole Gamergate controversy, right? I mean, like, it's getting more and more attention. So yeah, I mean, I might be writing because it personally interests me, but it's also sort of grounded in reality. Like, it's in the news. Most people would agree that this is an issue. It might not be the issue that keeps you up at night, but it is an issue. Okay. So anyway, you have this model to kind of use and imitate. But your job is to kind of do the same thing, right? Write your own introduction paragraph. Don't lose sight of that, by the way. Okay, it should be an introduction paragraph that hopefully makes some sort of opening move, defines the issue a bit, and ends with a thesis. Okay, so that you have that opening paragraph for your essay already in place, so you can hit the ground running come next week. That's the goal here. Okay, final question. Identify specifically your intended audience for your appeal to action. Your PSA, in other words, your public service announcement. Your audience might change. It might take you a while to figure it out, but I want you brainstorming already about a specific audience. With my video game topic, I just mentioned how it could have been a completely different audience that I'm trying to reach, but that would result in a much different message, and that would result in a much different essay. Okay? Your audience should not be everyone. Your audience should not be 4 or 5 different groups. Like, I'm trying to reach music producers, music fans, music artists, concert promoters, dancers, choreographers. No. There should be like one specific group that you're trying to reach. Okay, and I want you to think that through and tell me that audience for quiz question number 4. Okay, questions. I know we covered a lot. This is in some ways the roughest session, but it's also, I think, the most informative because we cover so much that hopefully it gets the wheels moving in your brain, right? You'll have to come up with a topic. You have to start brainstorming on how you're going to put an introduction paragraph together. I should just say one last thing. This discussion board activity, it's already open. Certainly don't rush through it. I mean, don't start posting things to the board tonight if you're not ready or if you don't have your topic or you're not sure how to go about writing your introduction because you need some more time to brainstorm and think it through. On the other hand, don't wait until Sunday night, okay? I'll start shouting at people come Friday afternoon if the board is surprisingly empty. Because not only do you have to post to the board, but you also have to respond to 2 of your classmates' efforts, okay? So you're not just posting your material and leaving it at that. You'll also respond to 2 of your classmates' postings. And if everybody waits until Sunday, that means everybody's running around and doing things at the last second. Kenny says, can I see the second question again? Yes. What are the 3 types of persuasive appeals? Name them, define them, and give an example. So those fancy Greek words that we went over. Yeah, are you on PC or Mac? Actually, I don't know it's been so long since I used a PC. I don't remember the screenshot shortcut. Some other people could give it. And Jarrell is kind of shouting out the answer. But that's okay because there's more than just mentioning the 3 terms. You also have to define them and give an example. Tarar, is there a slide for the session? No, but the video, this session is recorded, okay? And it's put under this activity. It's called Go To Training Archives. It will take me an hour and a half after this session is over to process this video, and then it will go here under Go To Training Archives. And then I upload it to YouTube, so you can just skip ahead in the video to whatever part you need to watch again. Okay. Any other questions? We covered a lot, I know. With topics, again, just message me. I'm happy to keep responding to you, give you direction, give you advice. But don't freak out. It might take you a day or 2 or even through the weekend to really get your topic completely narrowed and finalized and in place. It is tricky, and I do want to see people go through the challenge on their own of finding their topic. But once you find it, then you're set. Then everything takes off. But yeah, we need to find those topics. Kenneth, you have your hand up. Did you do that by accident? For people who feel like they're okay, you don't have any questions, you are free to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll hang out a little bit. and keep answering questions. Kenneth, no, there's no sign in for this because think about it. You're taking a quiz, so that's my way of determining who watched the session and who didn't. That's why I like these go-to quizzes as well. It's sort of easy points for the students, or it should be, but it also saves me the trouble of having to worry about attendance sheets.